And welcome everybody. My name is Alison Osborne. I work in the communications and engagement team at Barton Wilmore. And I'd like to thank you very much for joining us this evening and giving us some of your time to hear more about the redevelopment proposals for numbers 9 to 21A on the High Street of Walton-on-Thames. And this evening's session represents a very important part of our pre-application consultation with the local community, and we appreciate you giving us some of your time. For those of you less familiar with the Zoom technology that we're using this evening, you should be able to see the members of the panel. There are 5 of us in total, either across the top of your screen or down the side, depending upon your settings. And there's a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen that I would just like to join your attention to. I'm going to run through a presentation of the emerging proposals to give an overview and some more information on the scheme, and then we'll be very happy to answer any questions that you have. I'd like to ask please that you put your questions to us in the Q&A function, which should be at the bottom of your screen. And if you just type your questions in there, the whole team will be able to see it, and we will answer them verbally at the end of the presentation. I do need to let you all know that we're recording the session today, and we'll be uploading the recording to the consultation website shortly after this evening's session, so that anyone not able to join today can view the information in their own time. And if you have any problems with any of the functions of the webinar, please do contact the panel directly by pressing on the chat box at the bottom as opposed to the Q&A. If you type a message for us in there, we'll do our very best to help with any tech problems, but hopefully we won't get there. Is my screen working for a screen share? Hang on. Okay, so first I'd like to introduce the panelists today. We've got Alistair MacDonald representing the developer team. We've got Paul Shedden from Pod Architects, advising on all design matters. Susie Stephen from Barton Wilmore, who's our planning consultant. Ben Chimes from RGP, advising on transport. And then me, and my role, as I say, in the project team is to provide support on community and stakeholder engagement activities. So I'll now hand you over to Susie, who will start things off by talking us through the proposals. Thanks, Susie.
Thank you very much, Alison. My name is Susie Stephen. I work for Barton Wilmore and I'm the planning consultant leading the preparation of the planning application for this project. And I'm sure most of you will be familiar with the site. It occupies a central location on the High Street in Walton-on-Thames and sits directly opposite the High Street entrance to the Hart Shopping Centre. And hopefully in a minute we'll have a slide showing you an aerial of the site, which I can talk to against. As it currently stands today, it comprises 5 retail units of varying sizes fronting the High Street. 4 of the units are occupied by retailers including Boots, WH Smith, Vodafone and Freak Naughty, and then there is one smaller single vacant unit which was formerly occupied by the Thomas Cook travel agency.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Susie. Has anyone else got a screen freeze with the presentation?
It's not moving on my screen.
Bear with me 1 second. That's not ideal. So bear with me a second. Apologies, Susie, interrupting.
That's all right.
Okay. Is that moving for anybody else? I might need to ask someone else to steer the presentation if needs be. Is that moving for anybody? Sorry.
No, not for me.
Susie, could I ask if you could share it? Is that possible?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. 1 second.
Apologies, everybody. That's an unsmooth start on my part. I can see it on one of my screens, but not on the other. So apologies.
Just have to bear with me 1 second, Alison, because I didn't have it open.
No,
1 second.
Thanks, Susie. Appreciate that.
Sorry, I'm having the same issue with 2 screens. 1 second. Can everyone see that? Is that working now?
I can see that. Thank you, Susie, very much for doing that.
And is it flicking through?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
So apologies for that. I think we are at this slide. For those that have missed it, it was just an introduction to the project team, our names, and then this is the slide that I'm talking to. So you can see there, this is the site located on the High Street, which is here. We are it's Freak Naughty, Boots, Boots, WH Smith, Vodafone, WH Smith, Boots, and then the Thomas Cook vacant unit on the end. And then the site also comprises the servicing area to the rear, which is accessed from the service road, which comes off Church Street just next to the M&S unit on the corner there. So the existing buildings are dated and poorly configured for modern retail use, with retailers generally preferring more uniform layouts, which enables them to utilise floor space as efficiently as possible. So there's therefore considered to be an opportunity here to provide enhanced retail provision, which the existing retailers would welcome and support through the comprehensive redevelopment of the site. We feel this would represent a positive investment for the town centre at a time when high streets are needing to adapt in the face of ongoing market challenges, in addition to the effects of the pandemic. There's a couple of slides here. This just shows you the site looking up the high street, looking down the high street from the north. You've got the Freak Naughty unit there, the Vodafone, WH Smith, and then the Boots unit just here. And then this side, looking the other way, up the high street from the south, you can see the small former Thomas Cook unit here, and then the Boots, and then the other units sort of hidden behind the tree there. Now, in parallel with the opportunity to provide modern, high-quality retail units, the site also presents an opportunity to deliver additional housing in a highly sustainable location. Now, some of you may be aware that the council are due to consult on the new draft Elmbridge local plan next month, and this identifies a need for to plan for and deliver 641 dwellings per annum, or 9,615 dwellings over the period 2021 to 2027. Now, this figure is informed by the council's evidence of housing need, which also highlights a specific need for 1 and 2 bedroom dwellings, which are currently in short supply. Now, in order to meet this need and restrict development on greenbelt or greenfield land within the borough, the council's emerging strategy is to direct development towards brownfield sites in sustainable locations, such as town centres. Now, as a previously developed land, or brownfield land, if you will, the site therefore offers an ideal location to accommodate new housing of the scale and nature most needed within the borough moving forwards. I'll now pass over to Paul Shedden, who will talk you through more specifically what we're proposing to deliver on the site. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Paul Shedden, Director of Pod Architects. We've been involved in this project for some time now, and had extensive discussions with Planning Department and indeed the Conservation Officer to develop this scheme over the past year or so. On the screen at the moment, you'll see a ground floor plan and a typical upper floor plan. The ground floor shows, in effect, Unit 1, which is an anchor store size, capable of taking a reasonably large retailer. The other units are effectively reasonably economically positioned, but actually exactly what is required by high street retailers as we currently expect, as we currently see. There is an entrance in through the ground floor from the high street that leads through into the block of flats above, and that also leads through into the block behind and the car parking and the amenity space. There's an entrance from an access point of view back from effectively the M&S car park and the road behind that, which leads into our car parking zone, which is for the tenants above. And the block at the back, again, positioned to allow it to work with the overall master plan. On first floor level, we have a set of 1 and 2 bedroom flats working with a central core on the main block, and that carries up through the levels above, and it's rationalized in terms of flats on top of each other's flat. That allows us to keep columns away from the retail units below, thus therefore keeping them quite open in space. And that's exactly what retailers require these days. And the block at the back, a similar idea, 1 and 2 bedroom flats running up through the next set of floors. We go on to the next slide. During the process of development with this, we spent a lot of time in Walton looking at some of the very good detailing which does exist in Walton. And we've utilized that within the design that we've brought forward. We spent a long time talking to the conservation officer, an extensive amount of time talking to the conservation officer to allow us to bring forward what we think is a very good eclectic building. It reflects the ideas of the good design that's held in Walton. And again, the buildings look like they've got some identity that follows through the language of Walton design. Next slide. So this is a typical front elevation from the high street. As you can see, we've split the whole development up into separate buildings so that it doesn't look large or bulky. We've split the roofs up, the shop fronts up. Each identity has materiality, which makes every building look very different from the next. So there's not one mass. It's set up to create a set of separate identities that run through the elevation. Next slide. These are some of the images that we've created looking down the street. As you can see, these buildings fit in well to the overall identity of the high street. And the next slide. A view from the other side. Similarly, they work well with the massing and the character of the high street that already exists. That, I think, is my presentation in the main. If we need to talk any further, then please let me know, and I'll go into a lot more detail.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everyone. My name is Ben Chimes, and I'm a transport planning consultant. I work for a company called RGP, and I'm based just down the road in Woking. So principally, my involvement with the project has been to consider sort of accessibility to the site by sort of all modes of travel and the sustainability of the site, and predominantly matters around parking, as we've been hearing. So the development includes 29 parking spaces for residents, and each of those will be allocated, and the means by which they'll be allocated will be determined later, but it's envisaged that they will be available to families and those who would need a car. All of the parking spaces are to be provided with a fast electric vehicle charging point. So obviously there's an aspiration that residents who are allocated one of the spaces will hopefully make best use of the infrastructure and will purchase an electric vehicle, sort of further adding to the site's sustainability. We have had to strike a careful balance with regards to how much parking we provide on the site, but there's clear justification for providing a car light scheme in any town centre development, and arguably, as with any town, there's nowhere more central than the high street. So I suppose it's also worth mentioning that any sort of traffic or parking associated with the retail element of the scheme, as there's retailers currently on site, that's a sort of almost like a like-for-like replacement. But for future residents who will live in development who won't be provided with parking, we are of the view that people who choose to live in a town centre development without parking is a lifestyle choice. And I would imagine that many of the future residents will be young working professionals who are deliberately siting themselves in the heart of Walton with all its amenities, and critically to be within a short walk of the station, presumably to be working in London. Surrounding roads and streets are all governed by CPZ and parking restrictions, so it would really be impractical for anyone who isn't allocated a parking space to own and operate a car. And as I said, parking is restricted, but there's a good reason for that. As we more broadly try to sort of tackle climate change, as the old adage goes, if you build it, they will come, and the same is true of parking. So that's why we don't really want to put in any more than we have done already. For those occasional journeys that just do require a car, there are enterprise car club cars that people can book out for an hour or for a day, located on New Zealand Road and Churchfield Road, so that's convenient. Travel, of course, is not all about the car, and every apartment's provided with a secure, covered, well-lit cycle store for people to keep their bikes and to cycle short distances. And any visitors to the site, visiting friends and family, can quite easily park in one of the over 1,000 parking spaces that public car parking spaces in Walton that are available to everyone. And if anyone's interested in digging a bit deeper into the transport and highway strategy, a full transport statement will be submitted with the application. But obviously, alternatively, I'm happy to answer any questions tonight.
Thank you, Ben. This next slide just provides a quick snapshot of some of the elements of the pre-application consultation that have taken place. And it also shows our current estimate that a planning application will be submitted to Elm Ridge Borough Council sometime later this spring. So we have delivered a consultation leaflet to around 1,500 local addresses, both residential and business, to start to let people know about the plans and to invite their feedback. You may have seen an advert advertising tonight's session in last week's edition of the Surrey Comet, and we've been continuing dialogue with various local stakeholders and sharing information with various local representatives. We are in the process now of working through all of the consultation feedback responses. There's been a great response rate so far, and our consultation period continues for another week and a half until Friday the 8th of April. We'll be analysing all of the responses, and we'll be putting these together as part of a statement of community involvement, and this in time will accompany the planning application. So if you've already provided some feedback, thank you very much, it's appreciated. And if you are yet to do so, but are minded to after hearing more about the proposals this evening, we would really encourage you to please complete the feedback form online, the form that's available on our website. Alternatively, there's a copy of the form that can be downloaded from the site and returned to us by post, or you can always email us with any questions and comments and have your thoughts recorded that way. So what we will do now is pick up on the questions that have been submitted through the presentation. With just a couple in the Q&A box at the moment. So please do continue to put your questions in there. And if anything occurs to you whilst other points are being answered by the project team, please do make the most of the panel being available. So as I say, just two at the moment. First question, we got a question, do any of the panel live in Walton-on-Thames? And I think the answer to that, thank you for putting that to us, I think the answer to that is no. However, particularly Pod have spent a long time on this project. They're very familiar with Walton. There's been a very fine grain analysis actually to come to a proposal for what will work for this site. And Ben obviously works quite locally. I live close by, but not Walton itself. So I think whilst we don't live in Walton, there's a good deal of familiarity with the town. Don't know if any of the panel have anything to add to that, but I think we know the site well. Anything from anybody else? That's fine. We've got another question about, do we have any residential data to back up the assumptions that we talked through around car ownership in central locations? And Ben, if I could ask you to comment on that one, please.
Yes, of course. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm currently down in Woking, but I am Surrey born and raised, albeit not Walton-on-Thames, but fairly local. Catherine, to your question regarding what data is there to inform the assumptions I made earlier. we use sort of two principal methods to determine how much parking should be provided, on any given development. The first one is we have to comply with parking standards which are stipulated by the local planning authority, and we comply with those. In terms of refining the amount of parking to a more local setting, we can refer to census data. So when you fill out your census, people report how many bedrooms they have, how many vehicles they own. The issue that we transport planners have more broadly is obviously the last census done in normal conditions was obviously 2011, which is obviously over 10 years ago now. There is sort of subsequent data that's shown that car ownership has been falling more broadly over that time. So, any figures which pertain to 2011, you might want to sort of refine down. And obviously the data for the 2021 state census has been released, but obviously it came out during COVID restrictions. So we'll have to cross that bridge when we come to it. But to answer your question, yes, quite a lot of data is referred to inform decisions regarding highways transport and parking provision. And I suppose rather than going into too much detail now, as I mentioned earlier, it's all set out in my transport statement report, but it's all in plain English. So there's no jargon or complex equations. It's quite straightforward. So I invite anyone who'd like to know a bit more just to give that a read.
Thank you, Ben. We've got a local businessman joining the session this evening, and he's speaking on behalf of McDonald's. And his question is, how will the works affect the high street? And are we anticipating any road closures? Sorry, any unit closures, I should say. Could I maybe invite Alistair to respond to that, please?
Yes, there will be temporary closures whilst we redevelop. We have looked extensively with POD to possibly phase the scheme so we can give continuity of trade to Boots. And in fact, the anchor store has been designed exactly to suit Boots' requirement and areas and dimensions they gave us. So there is a possibility to knock down the left-hand half of the scheme, start constructing that, put the ground floor shell in and move Boots across, and then demolish the right-hand half, and that phasing will then catch up. So yes, there will be obviously temporary closures whilst the shops are being redeveloped, but it shouldn't be for too long.
Thank you, Alistair. And there's another one to be answered by you, please. A gentleman has said that he's calculating the vacancy rate in central Walton-on-Thames currently to be 14.78%, and the Heart is higher at 31.03%. And his point is that this suggests that the demand is for smaller units. Our proposal includes one large unit. Is that one pre-let to Boots? And if not, has it been designed to be easily subdivided?
That's a very good point, Mr. Davis. Yes, the Boots, well, I've obviously pre-answered part of your question. So the Boots has been designed, that Lanka store, to suit them and to move them into, as they're keen to stay in this location, keen to stay in Walton, but particularly keen to stay in the high street and opposite the entrance to the scheme. You're probably right in terms of a trend towards smaller units, and you can see that the rest of the units are smaller units, but we have got the option of doubling those and knocking a wall down between them if somebody wanted to take, say, a double unit. But we think these are suited to the modern day retailer. The current site is very deep, and the rear space is really not ideal to the current retailers. So the Vodafone unit, for instance, the rear section is just not used and hasn't been used for years. Smiths unit is very long and narrow. They do occupy the whole lot, but it's a case of filling out the space and spreading out to a unit that you've got. So yes, you're right, and I think we've got the flexibility in the design to change the size of the units and offer someone a double unit if that's where the demand is.
And can I just add to that, Alistair? Modern day retailing is designed specifically to be flexible. And all of the units, as Alistair has said, we can take a wall away to create a double unit, or indeed split the larger unit up into 2 smaller units if necessary. So the whole aspect of the design is to create a flexible front to then cope with the future of retail. Nobody really knows where retail is heading at the moment, and this allows that flexibility.
Thank you both. We have a question from a lady who is a resident of Central Walton, and I think she's really looking to Paul and team for some comfort on the proposed design and how our proposals are going to fit with Walton High Street. And there's a little bit of context which I'll just take the opportunity to read out. This lady lives off the high street, and she says, "I bow my head in shame at the lack of cohesive architecture that continues along the high street." And she notes that there are various unsightly residential blocks at either end of the high street. The influx of residents has not improved the high street area, and in fact there have been more vacancies than ever. The area behind the M&S that we've referred to is also in a bit of a mess. So she says, "Please forgive me. It's difficult, however, to buy into the idea that this will be conservationally of benefit." And could the panel please comment on that?
Yeah, I think I can comment on this. I mean, we have spent considerable time in Walton High Street understanding the buildings, the character of the high street, and it's incredibly varied. I would agree with with Catherine here. There are some reasonably unsightly buildings that have gone up. Equally, there's some reasonably unsightly buildings that have been there for some considerable time. The shop fronts, as you can see from this photograph, are all over the place. There's no continuity with any of that, and that's the character of a high street that's been built on and built on for many years. With regard to the architectural language that we've used in this, as I've said in the earlier on, we spent an incredible amount of time looking at some very, very good detailing around the central high street area and the areas around. We also spent an incredible amount of time with the conservation officer, numerous workshops with him to ascertain the sort of character and work with him to develop the language which we're putting forward now. Now, I think that we've created something which is unique and definitely would benefit the character of Walton. I think that's also taken on board by the conservation officer and the planning department. I could only say that we think that we've created something that will bring character and a new sense of identity to the high street. But I accept that everybody has numerous different ideas about what they think is right or wrong.
Thank you, Paul. We have another question from the representative of McDonald's. And it's to do with our proposed layout, but also just how this would function in a real world scenario. And this gentleman's comment is: the proposed access to the parking court runs right past the rear of our store. And just to confirm, he's talking about McDonald's. And this is where the staff parking is, and more importantly, where we accept and take our deliveries from the lorries. And the proposed block plan image looks like that if our lorry was parked, it would be blocking the entrance to the parking court. Could the team comment on that, please?
I could comment as much as that the shared area in there is shared by all of the tenants in that area. The delivery date, times, etc., that McDonald's will have their deliveries, I think will work well enough with the entrance exit that we have. Bear in mind, we've got 26 car parking spaces. It's not hundreds. So it's similar to kind of the identity that there is at the moment. So I don't think there's an issue with this.
Okay, and is it right to say on that matter, Ben, there have been sort of tracking exercises have been underway to inform the site layout, and we're confident that it works?
Yes, we have, and it would work. And I think whilst there's going to be some enhancements and improvements to the building, essentially the delivery and servicing and strategy will remain broadly the same. There are other businesses and other uses that currently use the service road. The site is accessed from an existing service road, and deliveries and servicing will continue much as they have done. But swept path analysis drawings, which essentially illustrate how vehicles would manoeuvre in and around the site, will be submitted as part of the proposals.
Thank you, Ben. Just relating to that point, somebody has commented it's not just McDonald's, you also have M&S and other businesses, plus people coming and going from the M&S car park.
Yes, we're aware of that.
Yeah, as I say, that's all been included in the assessments, and
absolutely, yeah, everything's been taken into account.
Great. Interesting question here. Somebody's put to us, one of the most interesting buildings in the High Street is the Burton Dorothy Perkins one. Are we aware of the proposals for that combined site, and are we concerned about any impact upon our own proposals?
We are aware. Well, the Dorothy Perkins proposals have gone back and forward for some time, actually. We have seen the proposals for this. The last iteration of it, I'm not entirely sure we have seen, but they have a similar identity to residential above retail. So I don't really think the implications of any other scheme is going to have anything on ours. I think our scheme stands on its own. I think it looks good on its own. It has a character which has split buildings up into to reduce messing. So I don't think we're worried about anything else.
Thank you. And so another one for Ben, please. Saying we're talking about a short walk to the station and all of the facilities of being on the high street. And this person is saying, I wonder if you visited Walton before putting together the transport plan. How is a minimum 20 minutes plus walk to the station short walk for most people? Everyone in Walton knows the station is nowhere near the town centre. If Ben could comment on that, please.
Of course. I suppose first thing to say is yes, I did visit the site. I have visited Walton on a number of occasions. And whilst I appreciate I can't frame everything through my own experiences or also my own perceptions, but for me, sort of a 23 minute walk to the station is a short walk. Indeed, it's a 20-minute walk to the station for me to go to work most days. And I do acknowledge that Walton train station is slightly peripheral to the high street and the town centre. That is the layout of the town. That's how it's evolved sort of over history. But sort of just think about how trying to ascertain sort of how that might be a problem. I don't believe people are going to seek to own and operate a car to cover that journey from the site. I think it's very much a walkable distance. Obviously, it's a much faster cycle, and cycling is obviously incredibly popular. And I mentioned earlier that every resident will be able to park a bike on site. But also just with reference to just how travel patterns are evolving, since the pandemic. More and more people, myself included, sort of have a sort of more hybrid style of working, with people sort of working from home. So future residents of the development might only be taking the train into London on odd days, and by virtue of that, the 20-minute walk to the station won't seem that arduous. And in fact, being in the town, people will be able to work, from a coffee shop or a library or something similar. But I think, I think residents certainly will be able to make full use of the relative proximity of the train station.
Thank you, Ben. We've got one question here about the wider redevelopment potential for the High Street. And this gentleman's point is, our scheme and Crown House will make the McDonald's building look like a missing tooth. And were these parties given the opportunity to be part of our scheme? If I could ask Alistair, please, to cover that one.
Can I answer first of all, just to say, I know Alistair would like to talk about the times that he's discussed about what's in this, but can I just say that the nature of high streets is that it's an evolution. It's not something that gets built all in one go. That ends up being a shopping centre or something of the sort, major development type thing. All high streets evolve through the period, and if one building sits alone for a while, that only gives it a recognition, or at least some enticement, to follow suit in the future. This is a natural process for high streets. Sorry, that was me finished.
And I'll add to that, Mr. Davis, that in answer to your question, yes, they were offered the opportunity to be part of the scheme. I don't want to reveal commercial negotiations too much in public, but yes, they were given the opportunity. We thought it would have been ideal if we could have included it. They own their own freehold, which is a matter of public record on the land registry, so they own their own freehold and their own destiny. We offered to buy the freehold and relocate them within a scheme to arguably a better location directly opposite the entrance to the Hart Shopping Centre, but they declined the opportunity, shall we say. So yes, but as Paul says, it's an evolution. Otherwise, where do you draw the line? You could carry on going down the whole high street until you redevelop every small two-storey building. But as Paul says, we've done a lot of work on the design of this with the design officer for quite a long time.
Okay, thank you both. We've got a question here about the accessibility of our proposals. And the question is, are we allowing for disabled people? How many disabled spaces will there be? And will there be step-free access? So I guess it's a bit of a combination of the pod team and Ben. We certainly are providing disabled car parking spaces. I think it's 4 spaces in total. Could I invite the wider team to comment on matters such as the step-free access point, please?
Yeah, it is all step-free access throughout. So we don't have any lifts or ramps for that matter. Everything is level access from the high street, from the car park. Throughout, there's 4 disabled parking spaces which we've given over. Yeah, I think we're probably doing as much as we possibly can do to commit to disabled access. Okay,
thank you, Paul. We have another question from McDonald's, and again, it's a sort of functionality point. The gentleman's point is, on the block plan drawing, it shows what appears to be a retail bin area, and that this area is roughly where we currently store our empty cages from the deliveries, cardboard cages, but also food waste bins. With this area gone, we will not have a suitable place to store these items hygienically or safely. Would there be an opportunity to extend and share this area with the new retail units?
Do you want me to answer that, Alison?
Please, Alistair, you're probably best placed.
Yes, I mean, Mr. Forbes, if you want to contact us direct, and I'll happily have a chat with you or anyone from McDonald's. But our development proposals are on our land that we own. So if you're storing bins on anything on the development side, then maybe they're being stored on our land at the moment. So, but happily talk through any solutions that work for both parties.
Thank you, Alistair. That sounds like that conversation sounds like a sensible idea. That's certainly something we can put in place, Mr. Forbes. Okay, next question. Will the Boots pharmacy still be able to trade throughout the development stage? Alistair, can I put that one back to you as well, please?
Yes, yes, they have asked for continuity of trade. They prefer not to close and come back. And again, I think I covered it earlier. We've designed that store specifically for Boots, and we've worked with Pod to look at the phasing, and we can phase it to keep them trading at all times and flip them across from one side to the other. So yes, it's a very good point.
Thanks, Alistair. And a question in from a lady who perhaps might be interested in one of the residential units. Her question is, could residents of the Hepworth Quarter own dogs?
I don't think there is any I don't think there is any rule or consideration given to that as yet, but it's a good point, and I think we should probably think about that one. But there is no reason either way at the moment, so I don't think there's no thoughts about that.
Thank you. That's one we can take away. We'll certainly make a record that that's been asked of us. Thank you. The last point in the Q&A box at the moment, we've still got about a quarter of an hour to go. Should people want to add anything else to put to the panel? It says it's not a question, but as a resident of the High Street itself, I think the proposal is fantastic. It will be a huge improvement to the area, and thank you very much. So that's a comment I'm very proud to read out. So thank you very much for contributing that. Two more questions in now. What hours of the day will the building block out direct sunlight onto the High Street? So I know those matters are being looked at as part of the preparation of the planning application. Susie or Paul, do you want to pick that one up?
I'll pick it up. We have the buildings that we've designed have been designed as a three-dimensional model, and we've built a three-dimensional model of the whole High Street and the surrounding buildings and everything else. Within the design and access statement that we'll put forward, we will show a sun path and shadowing identity of what happens in front of it. There are some periods where there may be a bit of shadowing. That's to be expected. It's not creating anything more than just a transient part, as opposed to anything to be worried about. But we'll be able to show that in the DNA statement. I can't give you a direct answer and tell how many hours. And even you wouldn't be able to do that in that sort of circumstance. You would have to do it in winter, autumn, summer, spring, etc. That's how it's worked out.
Thank you very much, Paul. Councillor Richardson has joined us this evening. Thank you very much, Councillor. And her question is, how many people have joined this webinar? This evening we have 10 attendees, with yourself included, Councillor Richardson. So yes, 10 in total for the webinar. We've been in touch with, I think it's 53 people who have registered for updates to the project and have received emails directing them to updates provided on the website, and we're reminding them of this event. And we've reached out to 1,500 local addresses, both business and residential, to let people know about the proposals and that we're here for any questions. But there's a small group of us this evening. And a supplementary question from Councillor Richardson: will the recording be easy to find? Yes, absolutely. And what we will do after this evening's session is get this recording uploaded to our consultation website. That will be done in the course of tomorrow. And then we'll be letting everyone who's registered for project updates, together with you and the other councillors that we've been in contact about this, will of course provide you with a link to access the recording. And as I say, that will be in the course of tomorrow. And looking ahead to the construction, if we're successful with our planning application, there's a question: what is the anticipated development timeline? And a supplementary point, because this is the gentleman representing McDonald's, Alistair, thank you, it would be good to discuss. So we will take that away and set up a conversation about that. But if we could just talk about the construction period and the anticipated overall length, please.
Paul, you've probably got a better handle on the
Yeah.
construction period.
So a construction period following planning, which would be sort of later this year, autumn, let's say, for that. We would need to develop a set of tender drawings, which I think will take something in the region of about 6 months. It will go out to tender somewhere at the beginning of next year, with a tender period of about 2 months, taking us up to next spring. And then I would have expected probably about an 18-month to 2-year period on site to complete the whole construction. But the High Street area would be finished much quicker than that. It's the areas behind that will be form phase 2 of the construction period. So between 18 months to 2 years.
Thank you, Paul. That actually brings us to the end of our list of questions in the Q&A box. As I say, if anything, if anyone has a question they would like to put to us, we've got 10 minutes remaining of the allotted time this evening. So please do use the opportunity to ask, as it's a small group, so you'll be certain to have your question answered by the panelists. So if there's anything else people would like to put to us, please do so. If, however, you think of anything after this session closes, anything springs to mind, and please do email us or give us a call. The contact details are all on our website and website shown on the screen just now. If you want to email us with anything that occurs to you after this evening, please do so, and I'll make sure you receive a response. And as I say, we're very happy to be receiving a really good rate of feedback from the local community, and our consultation period runs until Friday the 8th of April, so there's still a week and a half. If anybody wants to provide their thoughts and their comments, they'd be very welcomed. So I think we'll just give it a couple of minutes, and if anybody wants to add anything more, I think we can safely say there'll be no new people joining the session, given we're almost at the end of it. So we just have a couple more minutes. There's been a good range of questions, so thank you everybody for putting those to us. Right, no more coming through. As I say, there's only a short while left in the book time this evening, so I think we'll probably just draw this to a close. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. I hope you found it a useful session. As I say, please do continue to contact us and provide your feedback. And we're here and we're listening. And if there's anything that I can help with, if you respond to either the email or the phone, it will come direct through to me. Oh, one more comment's just come in. Thank you. And it's really a concluding remark. Thank you very much for putting this in. The lady is commenting, you think the building is going to be a great addition to the high street. Hopefully it will encourage other developers to keep their building height to a minimum. But I think overall support for that, and a few messages of thanks from others. So I hope that's been a very useful session. Anything else? I never like to finish too early, just in case I am in the process of cutting someone off, but I think it's all thank yous, which is much appreciated. Thank you, everybody. We'll draw it to a close now and then go and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you, everybody.